all of you coming out here. We mostly appreciate the people from the American Racing Memorial Association. That would be Mark Hitzler, Brian Hassler, and Holly Moore. They came from Indianapolis down here they came from Indianapolis down here just to kind of help us remember part of our history. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize we have Councilman Bill Borchett. We have Councilman Val Bainey, there he is. We have Congressman Greg Cromer, there he is. And I would be derelict if I didn't mention we have another city historian, Miss Bonnie Bainey over there. Did I miss any important people besides my wife?
That's the most important, Joel.
Okay, let's get a little background on this, and I need to pay some dues to people who aren't properly recognized in the situation. Kendra Manis has a magazine called Slidell Magazine, and she came to me one day and said, "John, write some history stuff about Slidell." I said, "Okay," but I said, "I'm not going to do stuff about John Slidell or Baron Erlanger. Those people have been written about before. I'm going to do the weird dudes." So I looked on the internet and found out that people who died in Slidell, don't believe everything you hear on the internet. It says Jane Mansfield and Arthur Chevrolet. Well, it kind of got me interested, and I said, I'll write about Arthur Chevrolet sometime, and I'll probably write about Jane too. And I made a file on Arthur Chevrolet, and I started pitching stuff in. I get on the internet under what's called Find a Grave, and I find out that he's buried in Indianapolis in a cemetery there, in an unmarked grave next to his two brothers. Now, who was this gentleman? He was one of three brothers that originally from Switzerland that followed their brother Louis to the United States. Louis was a mechanical genius, and his interest was in speed and high-performance engines, I guess you would say. And but he did make a car, and they called it the Chevrolet. And they had an investor named Durant, and they didn't agree. The Chevrolets wanted to build nice cars that would go fast. Durant wanted to mock Henry Ford. So there was a disagreement. I also got to say that they weren't the best money managers in the world. So they sell the Chevrolet company and the name to Mr. Durant, who later founded General Motors, and you know the story. You've probably driven a Chevrolet. These guys went on to race, and they're going to tell you more about the races that they were involved in. I'm not going to get into that, but they raced the Indianapolis 500 and other places. And in 1920, middle brother Gaston was killed in a racing accident on a wooden racetrack in Los Angeles, California. Louis and Arthur then decided to build a airplane engine, and they named it the Chevrolet. Again, they were besieged with financial problems, and they sold it to the Martin Aircraft Company, which became Martin Marietta, which became Lockheed Martin, which is of course connected to Slidell. The brothers parted ways. A number of reasons. We don't know all of them. Maybe these guys do. But they parted ways, and when the war came, Arthur came to Slidell to work for Higgins Company. He actually worked for the Higgins Engine Company. He was their production engineer. And he made $400 a month. That's the maximum amount of money you could make in defense work in the war. And by this time, he had suffered a good bit of tragedy. First of all, he had lost family relationship with his brother Louis. Second of all, his son had died in 1936. Second of all, his grandson came to visit him from Indianapolis and drowned in Lake Pontchartrain. Finally, his wife was suffering from dementia, and he and a partner were building a high-performance engine on the side. Well, the story goes that Higgins found out about it and says, "Hey, you're building that engine on my time. That engine is mine." So he destroyed the engine rather than giving it to them. So, to make a long story short, time passes, and I happen to get back on the internet, and I said, you know, I said that, no, I get talked about it, but I never wrote the story. And a young writer, and we need to honor this guy, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here today. A young writer, newspaper writer, David Priest, wrote an article on Arthur Chevrolet, and he said he's buried in this cemetery. Well, I immediately called him up and corrected him. You know, I said, no, he's not. I said, it's on the internet. I saw it on Find a Grave, and he's got he is in Indianapolis. I said, no, he's not. So I figured he'd forged a, you know how newspaper people are. I figured fake news. I figured he had forged this thing, so I ordered from Tom Shedler a copy of the death certificate, and sure enough, it says Catholic Cemetery, Slidell. Well, it wasn't much longer. I got on the internet again and found out that the Indianapolis Speedway had funded this marker, and it was on his grave in Indianapolis. Well, I call up the sexton of the cemetery, and I said, I think you got a problem. He said, what? I said, Arthur Chevrolet's not buried there. Oh, yeah, he's buried there. Yeah, he's buried in this place. I said, well, I'm going to send you a death certificate that says he's buried in Slidell. About an hour later, I faxed it to him. I got a call from the sexton. He said, Mr. Case, can we keep this just between me and you? He said, this is going to embarrass the Speedway. He said, you're right. He said, the grave that song is on was opened in 1936. It's the grave of his son, not him. Okay, I said, I'm not going to come up there and tell anybody. But it wasn't but 2 weeks until I get a call from the Indianapolis Star. And they wanted to know what we knew about it. And we told them. And they wrote a story called Who's Buried in Arthur Chevrolet's Grave. And they did not mention Mr. Freeze as being the one that really discovered this mystery here. And I want to make sure that everybody knows he's the reason we're here, along with these gentlemen. That's the truth. Now I'm going to tell you the fantasy. I'm not a Catholic, and I don't know much about the Catholic Church. But I am told that before Vatican II, the Catholic faith looked down on people who committed suicide. And I was told, but I can't get anybody from the church to confirm this, that they really didn't want to bury you in a hallowed ground cemetery. That they tended to, if they did, differentiate. They had a special section for those people, or they buried you on another fence line or something. Well, I got over here and I looked all on the wrong side of the fence, all over this thing, and I couldn't find a grave. And I walked down into the cemetery, and in this entire cemetery, there is one grave that goes north and south rather than east and west. Is it his? I've got no idea. We know this. He wrote a letter prior to his death and said he did not want a marker on his grave, and he did not want to be buried with his brothers. Be glad to answer any questions when it's over, but for right now I want to turn this over to Brian.
I have a question before you turn it over. You got up to the point of where his wife had dementia, and he destroyed the engine, but you never told everyone how he died.
He was suffering, he was very despondent, and his daughter and her husband and grandson came down from Indianapolis to move him and her back home. And they had most of the furniture loaded up.
Where did he live?
He lived on the corner where Salsa Loca, that Mexican restaurant was, from Carey Street. Right, almost where it runs into Pontchartrain. Mule Enterprises building, some people might remember it as that. Some people might remember it as the Dugas house. Bob, where's Bob at? Bob's wife grew up there. There was a garage on the left side if you faced the house, and kind of towards the rear. And he put a rope over the rafter and hanged himself there. They found him at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they came to move him. These gentlemen have had a conversation with his grandson that was here that day. And he says that he was buried under an oak tree, a large oak tree, near the peripheral of the cemetery. Well, you can see that could be a number of places. And second of all, a number of hurricanes have done a number on that over the years. So we'll never know. And it's probably best we don't. That's the way he wanted it. Ladies and gentlemen, the gentlemen from the American Racing Memorial Association, Brian and Mark. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for coming out today to be part of this. A little bit of background about us. Mark and I are the co-founders of the Indiana Racing Memorial Association. This is a not-for-profit group, volunteer board, that has been putting up historic markers in Indiana to honor the drivers, the mechanics, the promoters, the short tracks that made Indiana, we believe, the racing capital of the world. Now, there are some states that will dispute that, but today we're here to say that they're wrong. But the response has been so amazing from fans, both in Indiana and across the country, that today we are launching the American Racing Memorial Association, bringing Arthur Chevrolet's marker to his burial place. Is our first act. In the fall we will have a historic marker dedication in Fresno, California to honor the Vukovich family, the first three-generation family to race in Indianapolis. So we're very pleased to be here today. Along the way, in putting up historic markers, we found that the Chevrolet gravesite in Indianapolis was really deplorable. We heard from fan after fan that some of the markers were broken, some were misspelled, some were not correct. So we went to Chevrolet Motorsports and to the Chevrolet Dealers Association, raised the funds to replace the markers, all except Gaston, the 1920 winner. And so now there are two black granite wings that complement the gray granite marker of Gaston. So we thought it was appropriate and fitting to bring this marker down to honor Arthur Chevrolet. Now, throughout the years, the Chevrolets, they had many disappointments, they had many successes. There were differences between the brothers. And I think in the note to Arthur's daughter that he did not want to be buried with his brothers, obviously that continued. But Arthur was a great engineer, a great mechanic, two-time driver at the Indianapolis 500, and we wanted to bring this down, and we got to know John Case, who was a kindred spirit. If you know John, we're just like him. But we felt...
We're leaving town soon. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Don't tell all of our secrets, okay?
Okay. But in working with Our Lady of Lourdes here in Slidell, and particularly Janet Staines, we and John Terrio, who is here with us today, we are arranging to have this placed at the end of the walkway here, the sidewalk. But there will be another marker up here close that will explain the circumstances that in these hallowed grounds lies Arthur Chevrolet in a location unknown. Though obscure in death, he made a major impact on American culture. So with that, I want to turn it over to Mark, and we're just very happy to be here and for you to be part of this event.
We are, and thank you for being here at the first event of the American Racing Memorial Association. This is the founding, so you have made it. Give yourselves a hand. This is wonderful. And I'd like to also thank you for I would like to thank you for the cool weather. But we're on sacred ground, so I'm compelled to tell the truth and not thank you for that. But this is our gift to you, and we really appreciate the parish working with us, and John, you being here today. Deacon Peter was here earlier to bless this, what will become a cenotaph. This was cast by the Speedway, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, for what was presumed to be his grave. We found out it wasn't. By permission of them in the cemetery in Indianapolis, we were able to bring it down here and give it its rightful home as our gift to you in Slidell. So thank you. You've all made us feel very welcome and have worked with us so wonderfully, and we really appreciate you all coming out today. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
I want to share one thing with you that was recorded in the Baton Rouge Advocate. This was at the time of Arthur's death. The quote is, "Fortune as well as fame knocked at the Chevrolet brothers' door, but they were otherwise engaged. They preferred racing automobiles to selling them and the manufacture of racing engines to the mass production of low-priced cars." So we honor today a free spirit, someone who was a pioneer in the sport that we love, auto racing. Just a couple of other notes. Brother Gaston won the Indianapolis 500 in 1920 in a car designed and built by Arthur and Louis Chevrolet. Yeah. Only the third time at that point that an American car had won the 500 sweepstakes, which is what it was called at that time. Gaston was killed later that year on a board track in California. Some of the earliest tracks were made out of wooden planks that the cars drove on. There's a story of a hole in one of those wooden planks where kids would poke their heads up during the race to see the cars coming and get down when they were close. But they were very dangerous, and unfortunately Gaston was killed at that track. So again, we're so happy to have you here. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. John, do you want to say a word, or are you good?
It's a wonderful surprise.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Well, feel free to come up and take a look.
Take a picture.
And again, thank you so much for your warm welcome.
Yeah.
And well,
You're very warm welcome.
well, I didn't mean that, but your gracious welcome, and for being part of this today.
Thank you.